One issue that we might have when we're dealing with a router on a trunk configuration is that the encapsulation type for that trunk set on the switch is incorrect. How do we know? How can we fix it if it's wrong? Well, you see the syntax on screen for doing that. We can do a show interfaces trunk to see what the encapsulation type is currently. And if it's wrong, we could go into interface configuration mode and fix it with the switch port trunk encapsulation command. Let me show you how to do this out of a live interface. Let's go over to switch SW1. And on switch SW1, I've got one interface configured as a trunk. It's gigabit 1/0/24. And we can see its encapsulation type right now by doing a show interfaces trunk. And we see gigabit 1/0/24. And we can see very clearly that the encapsulation type is 802.1q. That's what we want. But if this said ISL instead and we wanted to change it to .1q, how would we do that? Well, very simply, we're going to go into interface configuration mode for gigabit 1/0/24. And we would say switch port, trunk, encapsulation, and we would select .1q. That's one thing that could go wrong, but something else that could cause an issue for us is we're relying on DTP. DTP is a protocol that oftentimes runs between switches, and it allows those switches to dynamically form a trunk. One side could send out a DTP frame, and if the other side is set to a desirable mode or an auto mode, it could see those DTP frames and it could say, oh, I see the other side of this connection wants to form a trunk. I'm on board with that. Let's dynamically form a trunk. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do any dynamic trunk formation here with a router on a trunk configuration because the router doesn't do DTP. We want to hard code the trunk configuration. We want to go in and explicitly tell that interface on the switch, be a trunk. And if it's not, we need to set it to be a trunk. We want to set its operating mode to a trunk. The command to do that we see on screen is switch port mode trunk. But how do we know if we are hard-coded to be a trunk or not? Well, let's go back out to the live interface on the same switch. In fact, we can just take a look at the output from this command, show interfaces trunk. We can see that the mode is on. The way we force this to be on, let's take a look at our running configuration. I'll do a show run pipe to begin 1/0/24. The way we forced this port to be a trunk is we said switch port mode trunk. That's yet something else that could break a router on a trunk configuration if we didn't have it set correctly.